And I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, and everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
Well, it's kind of calm now in Calgary Flames land. They have been officially eliminated from the playoff with the 5-2 loss of the Winnipeg Jets. That put the Winnipeg Jets in the playoffs officially here. So we are kind of in the, pardon the WrestleMania pun, we are in the midst of the Flames finishing the story for 2023-2024. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter as Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks, or subscribe wherever you get your audio. And joined by Dan from Fireside Chat. Dan, hello. How are you?
I'm doing well, Kevin. I think the Flames finishing the story is going to look very different than Cody finishing the story.
Yes, I think very, very, very true in that. But as Cody said last night, one story ends, another story begins. So that will mean the off season for the Calgary Flames will be a very different story.
The Flames finish their story like Cody's. You'd almost need to have some Oilers legend come back, like, I don't know, take on, Gretzky and Mess in a tag or something.
Yeah, maybe something like that. Yeah. It's funny because this is the first time in a couple of years that it's kind of this gap in between the end of the season and when they were officially eliminated. I mean, last year they were out, but it was down to the wire. The year before they finished first in the Pacific, and then we had playoffs to talk about. And then it was that horrific 2020-21 season, the 2021 season, which it wasn't the greatest hockey, but I guess, it was better than no hockey at all. So,
yeah, I mean, it was, based on where the world was, it was the best we were going to get.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
And it was better than keeping the league shut down for another night.
Yeah. Another year.
Another year.
Yeah. Wanted to start this podcast by acknowledging the 6-year anniversary of the Humboldt Broncos horrific collision on a wintry Friday as they're heading to a game in, I believe it was Prince Albert, a horrible crash that sent 16 people. 16 people were killed, 13 were injured. And they are currently in the midst of trying to get a memorial set up in Humboldt. And I remember that week really well. That was the week that the Sedins announced their retirement. It was the final home game for the Sedins as they played against the Aeizona Coyotes. And that was the Thursday night. And then the Friday night was the unfortunate collision. And then on Saturday, you had that final hockey night in Canada of the regular season, which was, I'll always remember Jim Hewson's start. They say that you can take some refuge in this game, and so let's try. It was really hard to watch hockey that weekend, and that was the final Sedins game was in Edmonton, and of course then the memorial funeral was this Sunday. It was a really horrible. It was just an awful time. And I think it's just important to acknowledge that as a piece of unfortunate hockey history, I guess. But yeah, I think it, part of the hockey fabric of what Canada is.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that we all rallied around, right? We all remember the Pray for Humboldt. We still have Green Shirt Day, which is going strong 6 years later. It brought us together as a hockey community. The thing that I want to remind people is Logan Boulet, one of the gentlemen who died, shortly before his birthday, on his 21st birthday, he signed an organ donor card, and because of that, after the crash, he was able to save 6 people. Yeah. So some good came out of that, as much as it was a sad time, but it's something that I think we as a country and we as a hockey community did a great job of rallying around. And I was so proud of us for being able to do that.
Yeah, we had the sticks outside. Some of course, of the broadcaster, I know, a microphone even outside in honor of the broadcaster that passed away during that. It was really, it was we kind of, there's a lot, at times hockey hasn't been the greatest in terms of culture, in terms of its reputation. There's been a lot of talk about that, but that was a time of unity for sure.
And, I didn't know if the Humboldt Broncos organization would keep going after that. And it still is. 6 years later, they're still playing. And it looks like they're in the 2024 playoffs. So, great for them to keep going and keep going strong on that. I know a few people that have made, Humboldt is not a tourist location, but I know a few people have actually made a visit to Humboldt to see the team play. And apparently it's a lot of fun to go there. So, keep remembering, keep honoring the Broncos and what happened. And, let's not forget. And as a hockey community, let's move forward with their memory in mind as we move into the playoffs.
And also the Ty Smith, former Humboldt Broncos player, and his girlfriend, Kat Castaner, won the Amazing Race Canada last in 2023. So, and they gave all of their winnings to the Humboldt Broncos Memorial as well. So that is part of that legacy that they as well. So so a very tough. Tough, but you're right. It's good to remember that. And
as you using the analogy used earlier, I think putting that memorial up will help finish that story as well.
Yeah. Yes. They did lose 3-2 last night in their semifinal opener in the SHL, by the way, Friday night. So
they're playing the same team. It'd be kind of eerie if they're playing, Prince Albert again?
Looking here, it was a nifty passing. Melfort is who they played.
Okay.
Yeah. I've spent many a time and through Humboldt and Melfort in my childhood, as my parents are from Saskatchewan. So I kind of resonated with me a little bit more as well. But also, let's start here. Let's congratulate. We've been talking about this, so I don't think it's much of a surprise on our end. I think clearly Kelly Rudy was listening to the Shifts and Pucks podcast because he mentioned his name on Hockey Night in Canada. But Oliver Shillington is the Masterton nominee for the Calgary Flames, and so they did list the nominees for all the teams on Friday, and they so I'm not one that thinks that there should be a winner of this. I think that this should be the end of it, but I think it's just congratulations to Oliver Shillington, and you can read his story from Eric Francis, and Salim Bajdi also shared his story as well of the difficult time that Oliver Shillington's been through, and so we
just to jump in here, for those that don't know, the Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy is awarded annually to the player who's voted by the Professional Hockey Writers Association as best exemplifying the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to ice hockey. Sorry, go ahead, Kev.
I mean, it's no controversy here. It's congratulations to Oliver Shillington.
That was the logical choice from the Flames, right?
Yes, I think it was. I don't think there was anyone else really to fit in that conversation, really. But I mean, I'm not in the dressing room enough to know what else has been going on. But at the outside perspective, it just felt like it was Oliver Shillington.
Do you think that the Oliver Shillington story is well enough known among the league and among the writers around the league that he will be in the final three?
Yeah, I do. I do. I suspect he will be one of the final three. I mean, I think he's almost an automatic.
I think so too. And this is being nominated by the writers. to me, writers love a great story. This is, I think, the best story of all the guys I'm looking at that were nominated.
Yeah. Yeah, I must admit I don't know all of the other stories though as well. I think there was who was Philly's nominee again? It was Travis Konecny, right?
Philadelphia's Sean Couturier.
That might be one, especially with the recent controversy with him and Torts and him being scratched and named the captain. I would, I hate picking a winner for this, but I imagine that he's going to get a lot of votes too.
Yeah, I think he'll probably get most of the Eastern votes.
Yeah.
But I look at some of these people, and I don't even know that, like, Colin Blackwell of Chicago, I don't think there's any story there. You got to put together some nominee, and I think a lot of people almost look at this as a leadership-like trophy.
Yeah.
Interesting to see Curtis Lazar as the New Jersey nominee. I didn't even know he was still around.
Yeah, former Flame, former Canuck, Curtis Lazar. Yes. Yeah. But congratulations to Oliver Shillington. We'll talk about Noel Juleson tomorrow, the Vancouver Canucks nominee for that award.
Yeah, I really hope that Shillington wins this award, and I think it's a good sort of end to his story and the story that we've had, of him going through 2 years of, mental health challenges and not being able to play and coming back. I'll be honest, came back at the end of the year and played better than I expected for a guy that had been out of the league for a year and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. He's been a surprise for the Flames for sure. Now, so tonight they're playing the Oilers. So for those who are listening live, I put out the tweet that the Flames should start Dustin Wolf tonight. I think this would be a really good opportunity to see where Wolf was at against a pretty good Oilers team right now. But it turns out it is going to be Jacob Markstrom that is the starter today. Who would you have started, Markstrom or Wolf?
I think I said this last time we chatted, I think that the starter job almost had to go to Markstrom in these last couple, had to go to Wolf in these last couple of weeks, not Markstrom. And I think that they've been starting Markstrom a lot more than I would have, especially if you're trying to see what this kid has. And a lot of times, I don't know, do we know which goalie Edmonton's starting?
I would imagine it would be Pickard because Skinner played last night. That's
what I'm thinking too. So, I would go Wolf. We saw Dan Vladar, I think, play twice against the Oilers this year. Like the Flames have been switching up, who they're giving looks to. I'd go with Wolf and see what Wolf's got there. But for some reason, the Flames are still riding Markstrom.
Markstrom hasn't won in 7 games. He's lost his last 7 games against the Oilers, as I told my.
Well, and even like the Anaheim game, I don't know why you put Markstrom in there. Like you should be, I think, putting Wolf in as your starter for the last couple of weeks.
I think that they're trying to do a rotation with Markstrom and Wolf. And, I think you have to, in some ways, the balancing act that the Flames are playing with their goaltending situation is you want to give Wolf the opportunity as much as you can, but you do have a relationship with Jacob Markstrom, which is okay, let's face it. Speaking of spoiler previews here, the off-season end of season garbage bag day, the most interesting interview is going to be Jacob Markstrom without question. And so that relationship between Markstrom and the Flames going forward is going to be important, whatever happens. So, and we do know that Markstrom was already upset, already expressed his feelings once. So I think that they're trying to navigate Markstrom's happiness with Dustin Wolf needing playing.
Do you think that the fact that the Flames are playing Markstrom continually says something about their desire to keep him?
I think that the Flames can be, I'll reiterate this, and I think you and I are probably on the unpopular side of the Flames track on this. I think the right move for the Flames was not trading Markstrom to the New Jersey Devils back in February because of the salary retention issue. And I still think that you still have a number of options in the offseason for him. If they don't get the right trade for Markstrom, they don't have to do that in the offseason. They can wait until the start of the year to make that happen. I don't know if Markstrom holds as much of the cards as people think. I think the Flames hold a pretty good deck in this as well, where you can, you can kind of say, okay, I'm going to go to these teams. Okay, we're still going to try to do our best to get the best out of that, even though it's not, And I think there's going to be more teams involved in this conversation. And I'm not necessarily convinced that Markstrom is going to hold the Flames hostage. Because I'll throw another team that I think entered the Markstrom chat. If the Colorado Avalanche are out in the first round of the playoffs again this year, I think they have to take a long look at that.
I think they would take a big swing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kevin, the reason I asked that is, like, if you have sort of resigned yourself that Markstrom's not going to be a Flame come the start of next season, why do you really care about playing him and keeping him happy, right? If you've kind of already, he's got one foot out the door. So it makes me wonder if the Flames and Markstrom have had a chat, or, you know, they have some knowledge that we don't, that, hey, we think this guy's going to be around long term, so we need to kind of keep him as our number one.
Well, and then you have the Vladar injury as well. We talked about this last week. I think that changes a number of things as well. Because I don't think I'm not convinced we see him back at the beginning of September for training camp. I think it may be a little bit longer.
I think he'll probably be able to participate in camp. I don't know if he participates in exhibition games, but I think based on the timeline of when he got his surgery, I think he'd be in camp.
But is he going to be ready to take an NHL workload, whatever that is?
You know what, though? If you look at Wolf as being in the NHL next year, which I think you have to, nobody's going to take a chance on a $2.2 billion goalie. You don't know what they've got after surgery. I think you send Vladar down to the AHL until you see what he's got. No one's going to claim him.
No, yeah, you're right. I agree with you on that. And then I guess the other question is do the Flames think Dustin Wolf is ready to take a number one NHL workload, or do they want to ease this in with a 1A, 1B situation? And that could be where you keep Markstrom for as long as you can. And then, I mean, we know the trade, no matter what, I think the trade is happening. It's just a question of when. Is it the offseason or is it during next season?
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. And I still think that if the Flames make a trade, you could easily take a goaltender back, whether it's a backup or a 1B. Now, when we say, is Dustin Wolf a starter, remember the Flames are going to be in a different position next year. Is Dustin Wolf a starter on a team that needs him to play 50 games and take him to the playoffs, or 60 games? Maybe not. Is Dustin Wolf a 40, 50 game starter for a team that's not poised to make the playoffs? I think so.
Yeah, but you still got the confidence issue with Dustin Wolf that you have to deal with as well, right? So you you
bring in some veteran as a backup.
Yeah, to offset that, I agree. But I think, that's what they're kind of determining here. But I think, I'm with you. This would have been a good game to have Dustin Wolf see where he's at with the Oilers anyway.
Well, that's it. And if we want to see confidence, I mean, see how he does against the rivals, right?
Yeah. And I think he's looked pretty good overall. But I do think you need to. I think at some point during this final stretch of games, you need to give him two or three in a row, just to see where is he at in terms of.
Well, there's 4 games left. So if you give him 2 or 3 in a row, you give him the rest of the season.
Because you got Anaheim, San Jose, LA, and then
Edmonton.
And the Vancouver game. So you got 5 games. So you can do 2, 3 in a row. And
I hear a lot of people say, oh, he's had some issues. Show me a rookie goalie that hasn't. I think that Dustin Wolf is coming in with a lot higher expectations than he should, because the way that he's performed in the American League and in junior and that sort of thing. He's still a young goalie. He's still going to go through ups and downs. He's going to go through highs and lows. I think he needs a veteran backup, someone who's been there, who can talk to him about some of that and say, kid, here's what I did, or it's okay, I've been there, that sort of thing. Whether that's Markstrom, whether that's, Matt Murray, whether that's James Reimer, I don't know what that looks like. But I think you're going for a 1A, 1B tandem next year. Yeah,
I agree. Let's quickly talk about, of course, why I want to bring up a few reasons why the Funds are not in the playoffs this year. I have about 4. The first one I will put is the power play, which is been essentially dreadful this year. And I don't know if we can examine that, if that's on a Mark Savard. It probably is a little bit, but it's also probably in terms of the personnel that they had. It just whatever chemistry was on the power play didn't click. And, I was on with talk with Anad yesterday, and he said that the power play has looked better with Miramonov. It has been, but I still don't think it's good enough. I don't think it's remotely. I still think that there's a lot of work to be done on that. So I think the power play is one of my first issue that I bring as part of the reason the Flames are not going to be participating in games in the playoffs.
Can I ask you a question about the power play?
Yes.
So if you think the issue is Mark Savard, you look for a new forwards coach in the offseason?
No, and I don't, because I don't know if it is. I think Savard is wearing it. I think Savard is feeling it, but I also don't think that this team. I think the team chemistry around the power play is more part. I think this is more roster construction than Mark Savard at this point. Now, if we go through next year and it's the same thing, then we can have that discussion about Mark Savard. But I do think he deserves another year.
I agree. I think that it's a new coaching staff. It's a group that, has struggled all throughout, every type of play. And I think that you need to give him another year, and maybe he makes some tweaks too. Maybe he says, you know what, I came in with an idea. It didn't work for our personnel. So let's change the plan next year for the guys we've got.
Yeah. Issue 2 is just, in terms of this offense has been, they don't get a lot of offense from their forwards, and they don't get a lot of offense without getting their defense involved in some way, shape, or form. Exhibit A would be the game against Winnipeg, where it was 2 defensemen that scored, Miramonov and Mackenzie Weegar, who's approaching 20 goals. Can you imagine where this offense would be without Mackenzie Weegar getting 20 goals? Yeah, so that, I think, the forward offensive production, although Blake Coleman and Igor Sharangovich are going to hit 30, and Nazem Kadri has been good. Just want to remind people, even though he's been injured, Connor Zary hasn't scored since the beginning of February. And Jonathan Huberdeau doesn't shoot the puck enough. So there's
Jonathan Huberdeau got 55 points last year in 79 games, and that was seen as a disappointing season. This year, he's played 74 games and has 47 points. So he could actually end up with less points in his disappointing season from last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I don't think it's just those guys. Mangiapane hasn't looked good this year. We have a lot of guys that, Dylan Dubé, when he was in the lineup, wasn't looking really good. I think that Backlund's taken an offensive step backwards a little bit. I think there's a lot of guys that have not been what the Flames need them to be.
Yeah. Issue 3, and you kind of brought it up here, but, they reconstructed the fourth line after the All-Star break. And I think it had some spurts, but I don't think the fourth line play has been nearly good enough, no matter who's been there. Whether that has been the original Dubé-Greer-Dewar combo or the Rooney, Hunt, Greer, Pelche combo. And, of course, Pelche got hurt, to be fair, and has been back down in the minors. So they haven't got enough production from the fourth line to allow them to kind of play 4 lines. And often Ryan Huska has had to kind of compensate for that. So, and play lines he probably play too much. I think if you look back and ask him an honest question.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, I think the best version of this has been Greer, Rooney, and Hunt, though they've moved Hunt way up the lineup. We've even seen Hunt play with Sharangovich and Huberdeau. I think this coach really likes Dryden Hunt. But I think, Walker Duear's back on that line now. And I still don't think Walker Duear is necessarily an NHL regular for the Calgary Flames next year. So I think you've got good pieces with Rooney, who's coming back. If Greer comes back, I think it'd be easy to find another guy on that line.
Yeah, I would be interested to see what happens with Walker Duear. He wasn't claimed on waivers, and I think right now it feels like he's a tweener, NHL, AHL tweener, kind of a 13th forward, 14th forward guy if a player is injured up on your NHL lineup that you do as a first top 2 call-up, it feels like at this point.
Yeah, I don't even think I keep him as a top 4 or as a number 13, I think. I think I send him to the American League and recall him when I need him.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? That's what I would do with him as well at this point. He had a good start. It hasn't worked this year. Fourth thing, and we saw this with Anaheim, they just seem to play down to the opponents that they should be winning.
And actually, before we go to Anaheim, if you don't mind, the guy I would like to try on that line would be Klapka. And Klapka really got a look early in the season. A lot of people were excited about him. He's never really been called up this year. But I think that Greer, Rooney, Klapka could be a good fourth line.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, they gave him a look at the start of the year. They kept him down for the rest of the year, and I think he needs a longer. He's a guy I think that needs a longer look next year. There's a lot of raw talent. Adam Klapka is kind of reminds me of Jamil Miramonov in the sense of there's a lot of raw talent there. You need to refine it.
Yeah, and I don't know that I look at Klapka as being much more than a fourth line guy. So if you're okay to bring him up and say, this is where he is, this is what he is, I think that'd be fine to bring him up and put him there.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. So let's, they've treated the Chicago Blackhawks like they're the 2010 Chicago Blackhawks. You can't seem to beat them in any way, shape, or form. They had a dud against the Anaheim Ducks. They lost this year to the San Jose Sharks. And I think, again, this is, playing down to Blake Holman talked about it this week and talked about how they've been playing down to opponents and playing up to opponents. And I think that's another reason why they're missing the playoffs. They did not take advantage of those games, and it hurt them.
Yeah, but I think that's been a Flames MO for years.
Yeah, it's not just part of their history, actually. It's part of their story, pardon the pun.
Yeah, and I think that we need to find a way, as a team or as a culture, or whatever it is, that, this needs to be fixed, and they need to figure out why that is and what they can do to change that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't think you're going to be successful if that's the MO. And I mean, we've talked about this for years on Fireside Chat, that you almost know that's going to happen. Their MO used to be that they would play for 2 periods and not one of them. And it would be 1 year it was they didn't show up in the first, 1 year it was they showed up in the first, not the third, right? Like they go through these spurts of sort of having issues. And then when you correct it, some other big issue shows up. And I think that's a big reason why, ultimately, this team has never been successful, long term.
Yeah. They're fighting a whack-a-mole, right?
Exactly, yeah. And, and I don't know how you fix that because you've changed almost all the personnel. You've changed a lot of the coaching staff, the GMs, the players. Like, I don't know if it's something about the Saladome Air or the Saladome, beer lines, or I'm not sure what's going on there, but something's got to change in the way that this organization approaches games and opponents.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like, you look at the Oilers, they feast on those bottom teams, and they try to, they score 5 to 8 goals against those teams. And one of the reasons I think the Vancouver Canucks ended up finishing first is because they feasted on those teams, and they win those games as well. They're not blowing them out, but they're winning those games. So you have
what you have to do if you want to be a top team, right? Those are your easy points.
Yeah. Do you remember?
And it's 2 years in a row now the Flames have struggled with the Blackhawks. I mean, last year they couldn't beat them either, and beating the Blackhawks would have put them in a playoff spot. Like, they need to get better with those. I don't know if you have to, change the name of the teams on the board in the dressing rooms. I think they're playing top teams every night. I don't know what you do there, but something needs to change.
Do you remember back in that horrific bubble, empty Canadian, all Canadian division, that they had all the kinds of trouble beating Ottawa?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that was ultimately one of the reasons they didn't end up in the playoffs as well. So you're right. This is becoming a habit, a bit too much of a habit. I mean, and last year I remember Daryl Sutter, back when they played Columbus last year, said that they went on a field trip instead of a hockey game because they were hanging out at Johnny Gaudreau's house.
Yep.
So,
and it's not just on the road though. I mean, it's at home, it's on the road. It's, it seems like no matter who the opponent is, if we know they're a bad opponent, the Flames don't play well. And if we look at their schedule this month, outside of the Oilers, these are all terrible teams. Like, if the Flames are in a playoff spot, this should be a month of easy points.
Yeah, if you're in the tankathon camp, and you want the Flames, if you think that the lottery opportunity is here, you've got a chance because the Flames should lose these games. These are teams that that they typically lose to. So, you've got a chance. You got a chance for the Flames to get a higher pick there if that's where you're. I mean, not that I don't want the Flames to have a higher pick. I would like to see the Flames kind of finish the season really strong and get ready for next year. We talked about last week, we had a conversation about the standard that needs to be set within this organization, knowing that the Flames are going to be eliminated for the playoffs. And Ryan Huska scratched Connor Zary for the game against Winnipeg. Were you surprised that happened?
No.
Do you think this happens again?
I think that's up to Zary.
Yeah. So
I feel like Connor hasn't been playing the way they expect him to since he came back from his injury. I think this was a message to him that even though you're a young guy, and even though, we're trying to play the young guys, you're not automatically in the roster because of that. So, I think they'll put him back in tonight against Edmonton and see what he looks like. But I think you need to set the message that no matter who you are, you can be sat.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with Connor Zary being sat against Winnipeg. I mean, as mentioned, he has not scored since February. Dryden Hunt has scored before Connor Zary, by the way. People forget that. And I know that people were saying, well, what about Kevin Rooney? What about Dryden Hunt? And what value is it really at this point to play in them? The pushback that I would have is maybe Kevin Rooney isn't part of the fabric of the future of the Flames, but he has worked really hard this year since he's been called up. I'm not saying he's been awesome.
We have to remember that Kevin Rooney has a different job on this team than Connor Zary does.
Yeah, but and not only that, but I don't think you sit someone just because you don't think he's part of the future. Sorry, and you give someone because Connor Zary is part of your future. This is the opportunity.
Well, I mean, Rooney's going to be here next year, right? So, I mean, they want him at least for one more year.
And Dryden Hunt has at least earned an opportunity at most to be in consideration for the top 12 on this team next year.
I agree. Yep.
I know that people don't see a lot in Dryden Hunt, but he's an absolute butt off.
Yeah, he's a hard worker, which is what you want, especially in a rebuild. I think, again, he's doing his job. His job is a different job than Connor Zary's job. And, when I'm looking at who to sit, I don't say, well, we're going to sit Rooney because he's less important. If he's doing his job properly, which I think Rooney is, you keep him on the ice. And I think that Connor Zary was not living up to the role he was given. I mean, Matt Coronado, I've had some issues with the NHL level this year, is working hard, putting in the effort. That's why he's still in the lineup.
I think with Connor Zary, he got off to this incredible start, and the NHL game has kind of caught up to him. And I don't think it's a bad thing that he watched the game from the press box, because I think there's something to learn from that. I don't know. I mean, I think it was part punishment, but I think it's a part learning opportunity for Zary in terms of getting himself, as I drop my pen, in terms of just getting used to what the NHL game is, because there's going to be more expectations on him next year. Right? He's not going to come in as a surprise. Oh my gosh, who is this? Zary Zoner Carey? Connor? Is this Connor? I thought Connor Bedard was with the Blackhawks kind of guy. Like, this is going to be a guy that he's going to be counted on next year. So he needs to know what to do. Uh-huh.
And, I think part of this too might also be testing him to say, how does he bounce back from that?
Yeah.
If he sulks and, doesn't play well, then maybe that says something about him too, because you've got to test these guys in some way and see how well they bounce back after a loss or a bad game or a challenge. And I think part of this, the coach challenged him, say, you didn't play well? Show me you can do better, kid.
Yeah. This isn't last year where Nick Ritchie takes the final shootout opportunity with the playoffs on the line. I think Ryan Huska has been as fair as possible in dealing with benches. We've seen Jonathan Huberdeau be benched. We've seen Andrei Kuzmenko be benched at times. I think he sat Kadri at one point too, if I remember correctly. So he has not been afraid to balance that out. So I give Ryan Huska all the credit in the world. And, try to just, He's not being Tortorella about it. I think he's communicating with Connor
He's not
Zary.
here to play mind games with these guys.
Yeah, exactly. That's what Daryl Sutter did. That's what, there was a lot of mind
That's the
games.
old school coaches, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Sutter did that. We see Torch doing that. That's kind of the, sort of the old grumpy coach mentality in the NHL right now.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that, I mean, what is Ryan Huska's background? It's as a development coach. And that's where the Flames need him to be right now. I mean, he came from the AHL. He's, done some work in junior. This guy was brought in to develop young players. And everyone's motivated differently. He knows what motivates these guys. And I think, he probably knows this is what Connor Zary needs right now.
Yep. But, yeah, so we'll see what happens with Connor Zary. The other guy to talk about this week is Martin Pospisal. Third ejection in the second half of the year for a questionable hit that he's not facing supplementary discipline for. I think, was it a major? Yes. Was it a suspension? I'm going to say no, based on what Josh Morrissey said. Josh Morrissey said he glanced him. He didn't actually hit him square with the elbow. So I'm okay with that not being a suspension. And that being said, I think Martin Pospisal, and I don't even bring up the Montreal problem or the Winnipeg problem. I'll go back to Montreal. I'll go back to some of the other situations where he's taken some really unnecessary penalties that put the Flames in a very awkward position. So I think he needs to look. I think it's fair. Is it fair to say he needs to learn to toe the line?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, I would agree with you that I don't think this was suspendable. But if you remember back in Matthew Tkachuk's rookie year, the league kind of suspended him to make a point, to prove a point, to make an example out of him. And I think this might be the same. You know what, kid? You got to learn where that line is. And we don't want this to be recurring behavior. So we're going to throw the book at you to let you know you've crossed that line.
Yeah, I guess, do you remember Mr. Uncle Brad or Daddy Brad brought Matthew to the press conference, had Matthew sit behind him, and Brad said, he's going to learn a very important lesson here, Matthew is. And he did kind of change his game, and he's been able, of course, of all the things that Matthew Tkachuk does well is he knows how to toe that line of when to stir it up and when not to. And that's where Pospisal's at. He needs to know the right time to do it and when not to do it. And that will
I don't want to say that Pospisil is the same importance in the Flames lineup as Tkachuk was. I think Pospisil's job is to stir it up, and that's why he's on the roster. And I think anytime your job is to toe the line, you are going to step over it. But I do think that the league really wants to clamp down on him and kind of say, now you know where that line is.
Yeah, and I think the Flames organization is having that conversation with him now as well. So I think that's something that he's going to learn as we continue, as he continues on his career. And I'm not saying that Pospisil is Matthew Tkachuk. That's not what I'm saying. But you do get a little bit of the similar learning curve that you're seeing with Matthew Tkachuk and Martin Pospisal.
For sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities there between the two guys, but I think this is what Pospisil's been brought in to do, and I think he's maybe played higher in the lineup this year because he could, but I think this is why he sticks around in the NHL if he does, and you have to be willing, I think, for that guy to cross that line once in a while. Excuse me.
Yeah,
if that's your job, he's gonna throw the line, and he's going to cross that line once in a while. And I mean, if he's a bottom six guy, you can afford for him to be out once in a while because of it. But I think that's his job, is to figure out, where is that line? Where's the wheel of justice in the NHL going to fall on me? And I need to know when there are times, I think, to cross that line if that's your job. And I think that's what he has to figure out.
Yeah, there is a skill in that. And, back in 2011, the Canucks, they had players that knew how to do that. Right now, you got Nick Cousins as an example in Florida that is way beyond the line, and of course is really irritating a lot of players right now. I mean, you have other guys that have figured it out over the years, like Brad Marchand, Matthew Tkachuk, those kind of guys that have, that's where I'm not saying Impossible's in that skill level, but you've got to find a way to be skilled in that area. It is almost a skill of how to toe the line of irritation. Yeah,
for sure. And knowing, who and when. And I think one thing we've seen with a lot of guys who try to play that way is that they don't, they're going after the wrong guys. They're sort of wasting their ammo on the wrong guy on the other team. And, if someone's coming after your top player, sure, maybe that's when you use your ammo on that one and you're willing to sit out for a game because you saved your top player or saved your goalie. So then there's a lot to learn about that position.
Yeah. So that is,
it's sort of like back when we'd see Jerome fight, right? Jerome didn't take on anybody, but when Jerome fought, there was a reason for that fight.
It took years for Jerome to fight. He didn't instantly get in and fight it. It took it took a while for him to kind of figure that out. So, and that's.
But even then, when he fought, he was fighting for a reason, right?
Yeah.
He didn't just lose his temper and go after anybody on the ice.
Yeah, he wasn't gooning it up. He was strategic in terms of that. And then, of course, it's funny looking back on that because everyone wanted Jerome again on the fight. And then when he started fighting, everyone was like, wait, no, you're going to break her hand. Right. And we need you. So that was certainly a fascinating dichotomy with Jerome Iginla. Yeah,
it was.
Sure. Speaking of Jerome Iginla, I forgot. I wanted to start with this, and we kind of went in a different way. But last April 1st on your podcast, you did something unique. And for those who don't know, why don't you tell them what you did?
Sure. So it's something we've wanted to do for a while. We've wanted to sort of look back at the 2004 run. And since this is the 20th anniversary of that 2004 run, and it also happened to be April Fool's Day, we looked, instead of looking at this week in 2024 like we normally would, we looked at this week in 2004. So that was our kind of way as a podcast to pull a little bit of an April Fool's prank on our listeners. And it was a lot of fun to do. I mean, the episode is titled Clinch because that was the week the Flames clinched the playoffs in 2004. And looking back at some of the names that were on the team and some of the excitement there, it was a lot of fun to do. So if you haven't heard it, you can go to firesidechat.ca or wherever you get fine podcasts and find us there. I would say go listen to it. It's a lot of listeners told us it brought back some good memories. And we had one guy who got very angry with us because he tweeted us very angrily saying, Craig Conroy didn't score a goal this week. All right, dude, listen to the whole episode, understand what's going on here. We also had a guy who thought that he didn't realize we had one guy who emailed us. He thought that we were just really good at reading the future. He's like, wow, when you recorded this episode originally in 2004, how did you predict that Connie would be the GM 20 years from now? And I said to him, we recorded on Saturday, bud. But it, so there's been a range of emotions, but it's an episode that we're really proud of. And if you're a Flames fan, go back and listen to it. I think it'll bring back a lot of great memories of the Red Mile, of, even the uncertainty we had as Flames fans of thinking we're going to get blown out in round one here. And we all know, going back to your WrestleMania analogy, we know how the story ended, right? We know what the end of the story was there, but it was fun to look back on.
Yeah. And was there any, like, when you looked back, was there anything that's like, oh, I totally forgot about this?
A lot of the names in the roster, like, you forget, I think, how sparse the Flames roster was, and also how many young guys we thought would turn into a lot more, like Chuck Kobasu, Matthew Lombardi. These are names that at the time Flames fans were excited about, and really, I mean, let's be honest, didn't turn into a whole lot. So it was kind of, I guess, interesting for me to go back and see the potential the team had. But outside of these few young guys, it was kind of the island of misfit toys. It was a lot of players no other teams wanted, put in with some young potential that worked for a year. But if a lot of those guys turned out the way we expect them to, Jordan Leopold, Robin Regeer, I think the Flames could have had a very different 20-year history.
Yeah, I mean, and you remember, of course, Game 5 in Tampa, it was Oleg Saprikin that scored the overtime winner.
That's another one. Yep.
Yeah, and he was a first-round pick as well. Yeah, you're right about that.
Between Saprikin and Kuzmenko, the Flames have not had a Russian forward in the lineup. So I don't know if they just got scared away by Saprikin or what happened. But those are the last 2 Russian forwards the Flames have had in their lineups.
That's interesting. Yeah. And even looking back, Kevin, at some of the names that only played in the playoffs, like, I mean, Mike Commodore, huge fan favorite, right? Everyone was wearing red afros and stuff like that. I'm told the guy's an Uber driver now. Like, he never really made it in the NHL. And a lot of guys, Brennan Evans, came in, played some playoff games. No one's really heard from him since. So it's kind of interesting to just see how many guys the Flames used that year. And the fact that when we look back, your goaltending tandem was Kiprusoff and Turek. And if you didn't know the story, you probably would have started the other guy, right? So really the story became the Flames took an unknown goaltender and rode him all the way to the finals. Yeah, it was amazing. And of course, because that year there was a lot of injuries too. People forget, like, that defense, by the time it got to the Western Conference final against San Jose, I mean, it was Steve Monador that got the winning goal in that game. The late Steve Monador, rest in peace, by the way. And he was a 5'6" defenseman at the time with that team too, and he had to play more minutes than he should have. That was a pretty depleted blue line by the time it got to San Jose. So. Also, looking back, it was kind of interesting to see how much of a Daryl Sutter team this was. Like, the fact you had Chris Simon and Christoph Oliwa on the same lineup, like, that's a very Daryl Sutter move. Yeah, it is. Yeah, right. Just big, nasty guys. Yeah, it was a nasty team that nobody really wanted to face. And they got the goaltending. And they were able to ride Iginla and Kiprusoff and a bunch of other guys and rode it to the Stanley Cup final. It was a unique run because it wasn't expected. After recording that episode, I went back and listened to the song "In the Dome," if you remember that song. And we also have that on our YouTube channel. We have the highest quality version on YouTube. If you want to go listen to it, search for it on our channel. But I mean, the fact that we wrote a silly song, which a lot of teams don't, about the playoff run, I mean, that was a year that it captivated everybody, whether you're a Flames fan or not. Sort of like the Humboldt Broncos thing. It brought the community together. We've talked about this before. There were Flames flags, Flames car flags all over Canada that year, because that was the first time since the Montreal Canadiens run that there was a chance. Well, the Vancouver Canucks in '94, let's not forget. But it was 10 years since a Canadian team held a sniff for a Stanley Cup. It was the best opportunity. So, like, I don't even think the Leafs captured. The Leafs had a chance a couple years earlier and they didn't really capture the imagination that the Flames did doing their run. And I think really the fact that the Flames were such an underdog was really what made this so interesting, right? I mean, we talked in the podcast, we didn't even know who we were going to face really going into the first round. And then, they defied the odds, and it was like, okay, that was a fun first round. We'll be out in the second. Oh, wow. Okay, we'll be out in the third. Oh, wow. Okay, we're going all the way to the end. Yeah. And I mean, if you look at a first line at the time of, Jerome Iginla and Craig Conroy, that's not an NHL first line. Marty Jelena being your, the eliminator, as they called him. That's not the guy you expect to step up. Like, this was an amazing sort of year of everybody just playing above their heads. Yeah. So it was a fun trip down memory lane. Yeah. Check that podcast out. It's certainly very. It's still on our homepage at firesidechat.ca. If you follow us on social media, it's the last episode there. If you go to firesidechat.ca, it's still on our homepage. And of course, when we put out a new episode on Monday, you'll also be able to find it from our archives if you want to do that. So easy to find. Easy to get to, worth the listen, I think. For sure. With the Flames, anything else we need to touch on? I think that's probably about it. And I know there's been a lot of people who have stopped watching or who aren't as interested in the Flames right now, and I get it. I mean, they're out. I think we have to remember, though, that these last 4 games, or
or 5 games, I think you said, still have value. And, there's still things to be learned. And I think some of the young guys, still, we talked about Zary earlier, needs to show what he can do. I think you need to get Wolf some starts. I think it'll be interesting if the Flames start playing different guys, maybe at different minutes, to see who's got what in them. My question for you, Kevin, is do you think we see any call-ups? Do you think we see some guys maybe like Klapka or other guys get some time that haven't had time yet?
I would not be surprised if they give Kuznetsov and Soliev or Grishnikov a look on this road trip. Dennis Gilbert's playing tonight. I don't know if they've been overly enamored with Hanley or Okachuk. And I think this might be a good opportunity for them to
I think they know what you expect them to be for next year, which is your 6-7 guys.
Sorry, say that again?
I think that both those guys are what you expect them to be. They're going to be your 6 or 7.
Yeah, but I think they may want to give Kuznetsov and Soliev a look, or Grishnikov even, just a look to see where he's at. I think I could see Klapka. I don't know.
Do you think that if we're talking on the back end, do they bring Poirier up?
He's coming off an injury. I wouldn't do it. I would wait till next year.
I agree. And do you give Cole Schwint a look?
Honestly, I would go Sam Morton over Cole Schwint because let's see, give him the thrill of a lifetime.
Morton's contract next year, though.
What's that? Yeah.
I don't believe that Morton's contract starts till next year. He's on a tryout right now, so you can't.
Oh yeah, you can't. I'm sorry, I've not been enamored with Cole Schwint in the NHL. It's not there for me yet.
Do you give someone that you haven't seen yet, like William Stromgren or Rory Cairns, a look? Parker Bell?
Yeah, I would actually. I wouldn't mind seeing one of those 3. They've played pretty well in with the Wranglers. I wouldn't mind them seeing to get a look in, especially in that last home game.
I think in the last 4 games, I think this is what we've got to look at is bringing some of those young guys in. I mean, what does Huberdeau or Kadri have to prove at this point? And I know you usually don't shut guys down if you're not in the playoffs, but I'd start to look at shutting down some of my veterans. Shutting down some of my veterans and giving some of these guys a 1 or 2 game look, just see how they look out there.
Yeah. I'll throw one question. Maybe we'll discuss this in a deeper time in a few weeks. What do you think the chances of a buyout of Jonathan Huberdeau is becoming?
I don't think there's any need for it. I mean, next year you're going to have a ton of cap room. $10 million is not going to be as onerous as it was. I think by the time you buy him out, you're going to want some of that cap room back at the end.
Yeah.
I think you just eat the contract and keep going. I mean, so they've, according to my calculations, Flames have about $19 million free next year. So what's another 10? I mean, keep Huberdeau, run him, see what he does. Even if he's a 3rd-line center next year or 2nd-line center, great. He's still an NHL veteran who can score you 45 points. There's value to that in a rebuilding team.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy him out, I would wait till the latest possible date to buy him out. And that's when you're starting to get competitive, because I really don't want that albatross against the salary cap if you're trying to get competitive and you've got, $5 million you can't use.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's got 6 years left. So that would be $5 million for almost 12 years if you buy him out.
Yeah, it's hard to do. You can't do it. You can't do it, but man, it is. I think if
I was going to buy players out, there'd be other guys I'd be buying out than that albatross of a deal.
I think Mangiapane would be a one I would be looking at. I think the one I wonder about is Andre Mangiapane. I don't see him back with the team next year.
I think that. I mean, Matt, my co-host, has said the same thing. He thinks Mangiapane could be a good buyout, but I think if you're buying out Huberdeau right now, you're really financially irresponsible for a team that's if the Flames were in a different position, if the Flames were in a position of looking like a top team in the West, I think it's a different conversation. But you can afford to take Huberdeau's deal. And honestly, Kevin, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Flames take on another quote-unquote bad deal next year, bad money from somebody, and almost do the reverse Monahan type trade.
Yeah. Yeah, and they get a pick for it. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that. I
mean, how many teams are going to have 19 million? I think the Flames are going to have the most, according to my math, the most money available. So if you're going out in your free agent shopping, you go, crap, now I got to move another deal. Calgary's got tons of space. They'll give us some, we can give it to them. They'll give us some relief here.
And I don't see the Flames getting heavily into the free agent. I think that they go after a couple of guys to supplant some veteran leadership in there. But I
think if I was Don Maloney, I would probably lock Conroy's cell phone in a safe on July 1st and let him have it back on the 2nd.
Well, he may need to make some trades though. So you need Conroy's cell phone for trades, but in terms of any free agency, you block it.
Yeah, I don't know if you need to make those trades on the 1st.
No, but things are planted, and you need to have those conversations. But I honestly think Conroy. I don't think Don Maloney needs to block Craig Conroy's cell phone. I think Conroy knows he's not going to do that. I think that Craig Conroy knows that this team needs to get younger. I think they know that, and based on this year, Craig Conroy has shown me that he's intelligent enough to know where this team needs to go, and the trades that he's made has shown where he's at, right? I mean, he's not going to win GM of the year, but for the love of God, what he was able to pull off, I think it's been fantastic. We're not going to see the roots of this for a long time. And
I don't think it's done either, Kevin. I think when we look at the Markstrom deal, and I would be honestly surprised if the Flames make every pick they have now in the draft.
Yeah.
They've got such draft capital. I can see them flipping a pick for a player or something like that.
Yeah. And, there's one other guy I think that I'm very curious that for the off-season, end of season bag day, I'm starting to wonder if Michael Backlund's back with the team next year, or if they decide, I think, and in some ways, I think the Flames will try to do the best that they can into getting as much as they can for Michael Backlund, but I almost think that the right thing to do for Michael Backlund is trade him to a contender next year.
I mean, Michael Backlund is a Flame as long as Michael Backlund wants to be a Flame. I don't think the Flames are going to be actively shopping him, but if Bax comes to Conroy and says, Connie, I've got one last crack at this, move me, then I think they move him, but I don't think you're out shopping.
Yeah, I think, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happens this offseason.
No, and I think sort of like Jerome. I mean, to me, and the sentiment I got around Jerome is when they moved him, we were all sad to see him go, but we were happy to see him chase a cup because we love the player. And I think that would be the same kind of sentiment here.
Yeah. For sure.
I think another interesting, if we want to go that direction, does Kadri want to be here next year?
I do think Kadri will at least want to stick around to at least the trade deadline.
Yeah, I don't know if you can move such a big deal at the deadline, though. It's not his last year. I think if you're going to move that almost has to be something the teams are building their budgets around.
Okay, maybe I'll reword this. I want Kadri at least for the trade. I think he's been fantastic this year.
I do too, but I don't know if I'm, again, a guy who's getting older. I don't know if I want to stick around a rebuilding market.
That's totally fair for Kadri to be like that. But he's really shown some passion and desire in that dressing room.
He has. And if Backlund leaves, I think he gets the C.
I think it's between him and Uyghur.
Yeah. And, maybe you do a co-captain thing again.
Yeah, maybe that's the other. The leadership group would consist of Kadri, Coleman, Uyghur for sure. Or you throw it on one of the young kids. But...
Well, we've already seen them, giving the A to Anderson. So I think you probably have Anderson in that conversation.
Yeah, he's the fourth one. I think you have to take the A off Huberdeau.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I do understand where Flame fans are coming from when they see. And I'm not saying that Huberdeau's not making an effort, but the production certainly hasn't been there, and this guy has the A on.
Yeah, but we also don't know what's going on behind the scenes, right? And maybe that A is very valuable in the dressing room.
That's totally true. It is true that we look at that from a fan perspective as well. Yeah, so there's still a lot to talk about with the Flames as we head into the off season, and of course, then there's the draft lottery, and then all of that will come through as well. But let's go to other NHL and a couple of. Let's save the line brawl for the conversation with Sean and Chris. I want to kind of split some of this up, but I know that you've been very passionate about the Aeizona Coyotes situation here, and we've talked about this enough. And the announcement that the auction for the land that the Aeizona Coyotes are going to build is on June 27th. And that means if the Coyotes win this land, and they hope that they do, this is another 3 years of Mullet Arena. And if not, it cares. The ownership of the Aeizona Coyotes has already said it. This is pretty much the last straw for the Aeizona Coyotes. I'm kind of, I think that the length on this and the situation with this is I think the NHL, like I'm trying to think of my words as I think about this here. I kind of think that the NHL has got to put their foot down here. Like this is to the point where this is almost so amateurish. Oh, we are going to win this auction. Like I really need the NHL. I wish the NHL would say, you know what? I don't give a damn what this auction is. We cannot be playing in a 1,000 mullet arena for 3 seasons while you figure this out.
Kev, I think if it was almost any other team, that would be the mentality.
Yeah, and I think it's just the coddling towards the Aeizona Coyotes here is such a detriment to the NHL. And,
I mean, if let's put it the opposite way. If the Calgary Flames didn't have the dome, they were playing in Red Deer. They won a land auction in Balzac and said it'll be 3 years. The NHL would say move them.
Yep, they would. If same with Vancouver, if the arena was in Abbotsford, see ya.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Especially when I always remind people too, you can't just move them, right? It's like a McDonald's. You can't just place one. Somebody needs to want to buy it. And when you have a guy who's actively saying, please give me an NHL franchise, I don't see why you don't give it to the guy. If you want to move it and there's nobody to buy it, that's one thing. You can't just, move it if nobody wants it or if the owners don't want to support it. But when you've got a guy saying, please, I would like your team, why would you not give it to an active owner or a guy who wants to be an active owner? It reminds me of Jim Balcelli back in the day. Remember, he pretty much said, I'll pay cash for a team. Give me a damn team.
And Gary was like, no.
I remember that's when he talked about buying the Phoenix team, I think, and moving them to Hamilton. And I remember listening to that's right, Pittsburgh. And I remember listening to him on sports radio in Toronto. And there was a guy who called in. You could just see this guy's face was red through the radio, talking about if you put a team in Hamilton, you'll kill the team in Buffalo. That's not going to work. And his answer was, then sell me the team in Buffalo. I really don't care which one you sell me.
Yeah. You can't have that. You have to I think what Ryan Smith is doing in Salt Lake is he wants an actual franchise in the city of Salt Lake City, which works, right? Because he sees the value in that specific market. You can't do the ball silly, but you also, I just this hanging around with Arizona here and waiting another 3 years. This is not good for the Aeizona Coyotes organization. I
think, Kevin, for the first time, and I think where the pressure is going to come from, for the first time, this is dragging the league down, right? The players get a percentage of profits. So if Arizona is not pulling their weight and not putting profits in, the players aren't going to want that, right? They're going to, I think, pressure them to move more than ever. The owners are looking at going, wow, we just got 2 expansion fees, almost $1 billion each. If we can sell it to Ryan Smith for, let's make up a number, $500 million, the relocation fee, we want that. We've had a couple of years of bad profits because of COVID. I think the money's finally there and the numbers finally line up to move it. No matter how much Gary wants it, I think everyone else is going to want the financial windfall from moving it.
Yeah, I could see the NHLPA filing a grievance. I've heard Friedman talk about this too. At 32 Thoughts, that there's a possibility that the NHLPA could file a grievance playing at Mullet Arena because it is not up to NHL standards. Like, you cannot tell me, as fun it is a lot of people are saying it is to go to a game to see a unique experience. This should not be happening for now 4 years, right?
Nope.
Like even Oakland, you look at in Major League Baseball, Oakland moving to Sacramento for 3 years, at least that's a 10,000 seat stadium, and they're not getting 10,000 people in Oakland anyway, so they're actually increasing that. This is not like this is what is a 2,000 seat stadium or
I think it's 5 for hockey.
Right, but still, it's not. Still, whatever it is, it's under 10, and it's not working.
Nope.
And yeah, and you're like not only that, from a TV production point of view, Dan, it is hard to watch a game in Arizona because the lighting is terrible, the camera angles are terrible.
It reminds me of back when the Islanders were playing at Barclays Center, and there was that big car there, and it just looked terrible on TV.
Oh yeah, that was yeah. I was surprised no one tried to steal that car.
Where are you going to take it? Drive it through the Zamboni door and out?
Well, when you're a thief, you're an idiot, Dan. So that's kind of maybe where.
And I guess my only logistical question on this is, so June 27th is the auction. If they don't get it, is there enough time to move this team in the offseason? Like, you've already got to start doing scheduling and planning and travel arrangements for next year. Are we expecting, say, they lose it, on the 27th, and by July 1st, let's say, we're told that this team's going to be in Salt Lake? Or do you almost have a season where they are, a lame duck? We say, hey, we've got to leave them there for 1 year. And then you're going to get even worse attendance if everybody knows they're moving. I mean, if people said, oh, the Vancouver Canucks are moving a year, nobody's going to go watch them, right? They don't want to get invested in a team. So I don't know what the logistical next moves are.
Yeah. Is cutting it way too close for my liking.
I think we saw something similar with Winnipeg, like that moved in one off season, but that's a much different fan base. And I don't know that. I guess there's 2 ways to look at it. If you move them to Salt Lake, would you get the same number of people potentially in your first year? Yes. I think you'd get at least, let's say, 3,000 to 5,000 people. Does it change the travel all that much? Probably not, right? If you were planning to go to Phoenix, now you're going to Salt Lake, I think the league could handle that. But without knowing all the details, I'd probably move them and say, even if we get less people in the first year, we're building a fan base.
Yeah, I guess the other part of this is I'm like with Winnipeg, you're right. There was already a season ticket plan in place. There was already a rally in place. I don't know. I'm just looking up here.
And Winnipeg was a proven hockey market. You knew that you would sell the tickets.
And Salt Lake is not. So I don't know if they've done a season ticket rally yet.
I think that your plan going in July 1st is probably different if you're if you're in Phoenix or if you're in Salt Lake. Like, I think if I'm Salt Lake and I want to make a splash, I think I might go out and spend a whole lot of money bringing in a big name.
Yeah, but I also think too, you got to be prepared. I don't know if you've got enough time to prepare unless they are already in conversations. Like, okay, Salt Lake, you better be ready, and this is what's going to happen. But
I think I think the smart thing to do right now would be to have a plan A and a plan B.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I think internally, whether that's the same people, whether that's different people, I think you've kind of got to say, okay, we're ready to pivot either way.
Yeah, and I hope they're smart enough to do that. But
and I guess the big question would be like, the draft is shortly after the 27th. The draft is the 28th, 29th, the next day. Like you're not, I think if they had it all figured out, it would be awesome to go to the draft with a Salt Lake Coyotes jersey or whatever they're going to be called. But I don't think you're going to move that quickly. So it'll be interesting to see what the next steps are.
yeah,
I think this team's going to have to stay in Phoenix for a year or Tempe or wherever they are now.
yeah, Glendale.
I don't know. They've moved to so many places. I don't even know where they are.
I'm so confused. Well, I know. Yeah, it's just. Sorry, it is. It's an the one difference between the Oakland A's and the Arizona Coyotes is the Oakland A's has a series of World Series victories and championship pedigree behind them. That when they move to Las Vegas, it's actually sad. I don't know what the Arizona Coyotes have truly contributed to the National Hockey League.
They've given a lot of teams cap relief.
Yes. I mean, they've had legendary players on their LTIR like Pavel Datsyuk, Chris Pronger. They should hang those names in the rafters as part of LTIR.
There you go. Just maybe they should have like a big crutch or something. Put all the names embedded on the crutch.
Yes. Yeah. A hospital bed.
That's right.
Yeah. Probably too far to go in memorial, but hospital bed, I think, would be, yeah.
But, I think this team has to be moved, and I think everybody sees it. I think the question is just logistically, what does that move look like, and how quickly does it take? And I don't think they can turn around over the summer. I really don't. I mean, I hope they do, but I don't know if it's feasible to assume that by, September at the start of training camp, they are in Salt Lake.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to discuss is probably the two most interesting. One is really interesting and one is absolutely not. But they both involve Sidney Crosby. The interesting part of all of this is the Hart Trophy race, which is there are a number of different ways that you could actually go. Because you have the argument for Nathan MacKinnon. There is an argument for Connor McDavid. There's an argument for a guy that scored 60 and is running towards 70 goals, Austin Matthews. There's also an argument for Nikita Kucherov. I'll hold the Crosby part for a second. There's also been some that feel a defenseman or a goalie should win it. Some feel there's Predator fans calling for Roman Josi to be in the Hart Trophy conversation. There are Winnipeg Jet fans that feel Connor Hellebuyck should be in the conversation. And I think that there's definitely Canuck fans that are absolutely convinced that Quinn Hughes should at least win the Norris, and it is a hands-down victory for Quinn Hughes. But there's also, here is Sidney Crosby, and the Pittsburgh Penguins were left they were left on the roadside here as a Penguin. Done. They trade Jack Gensel at the trade deadline, and looks like they're done. But the race or the lack of race in the Eastern Conference between Philadelphia, Washington, and the Islanders and Detroit, not able to win, has actually literally inviting all of the other Eastern Conference teams to sneak their way into this playoff race, which includes Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. And the question is, Dan, if the Penguins get into the playoffs, is Sidney Crosby the Hart Trophy winner?
I don't know if it's that cut and dry.
It is a tough argument.
It is. And for those that don't know, the Hart Trophy is awarded to the most valuable player in the National Hockey League during the regular season.
And that's why Crosby gets that conversation, because that's what you mean.
To me, I think it depends how far the Penguins go. If the Penguins get to the playoffs and then they're out in 4, no.
Well, it doesn't matter. They don't vote in the playoffs, though, right? It's only the regular season.
Yeah, but I guess because of that, I don't know that you can give it to Crosby.
Yeah, I think I could see Crosby winning the Ted Lindsay Award for best player. I mean, I think that there would be. I mean, that's one that's voted on by the players, and it's quite
not best player, best forward.
Best forward, right? But I could see him getting votes for that. But in terms of, I think it's going to be tough for him to put in the Hart Trophy conversation because there's so many other people that have been involved.
Well, no, you're right. It is the league's most outstanding player. So yeah, any position.
Yeah.
I could see the Lindsay Award for sure. For those that don't know, that used to be the Lester B. Pearson Award. I don't know if I'd give it to the Hart Trophy though.
Yeah, I think that's the tough part. It's tough. It's tough because, I mean...
And yes, he's come through at the end, but I mean, the fact that Pittsburgh didn't look good during the season, I don't know. I think, most of the time when we see guys with that award, they have performed well throughout the season.
I think Crosby has performed well. The team hasn't, and it's tough to put an MVP.
But a player can only be as good as their team.
That's true. I mean, you look back in history, though, this reminds me, to bring this to the Flames, 2002, Ginla gets 50, and then there's the debate between Ginla and Theodore of who should win the Hart. And it was Jose Theodore that won because the Canadiens made the playoffs and the Flames didn't, right? So this might be sort of one of those same situations, but also it's really hard for me to argue against McKinnon. It's also really hard for me to argue against McDavid for what they both have done. If
I was voting, I'd be voting for McKinnon this year.
I would too, but I think that I think McDavid has a shot. I think
McDavid has a shot, and I think because he's in the East, I mean, we often see the East sort of take a lot of these votes. But yeah, I don't know. I my vote would go for McKinnon.
Mine would be too. Yeah, I think the league will. I think that there's a way. I hope that the league finds a way to honor Crosby, and in some ways, but
if this was Crosby's last year, I would say yes for the Hart. But I don't think it is Crosby's last year.
Yeah. I mean, I think some people wonder if this would be Crosby's last year in Pittsburgh, but I don't see that, to be honest with you.
No, I don't either.
I think he's going to stick around. But
yeah, I don't think there's anything right now that tells us that Crosby's, leaving the league. I mean, maybe he leaves Pittsburgh. I don't know. I think it depends, how they do in the playoffs and whatnot. But nothing tells us that. Right now, I don't think Crosby's leaving Pittsburgh even.
No, I don't think so either. I think he's going to stick around. But anything else we should talk about?
And that's about it.
I'm trying to think if I have one last question. I think you asked a good one there if we see any call-ups. I think I like that one.
I think that, and I think if they can make a move to Salt Lake over the summer, to good last questions.
I think
your Crosby question too could be your last question.
That's entirely fair. I think we've done so we've had several one last questions. So yeah, and stick taps.
It's like at a concert. They keep cheering and we keep coming out for an encore.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, fans. We're out of here. But before we go, maybe tell everyone how to find you again.
We are anywhere you can find podcasts. Not Google Podcasts, which is still on here. They've shut down, but anywhere else. I'll have to update the graphic. I know I said that last week. Anywhere you can find podcasts, firesidechat.ca is the best place to find us. Take a listen to our 2004 show. It is, I think, a fun show. We've got some good feedback, and now that you know it's a joke, and I think you go in listening with that in mind, you're going to have some fun with it. Otherwise, we record a new episode on Sundays. We'll be talking about the last week for the Flames, some of the same things here, some other topics I want to talk about as well. And we will be, as Kevin said, a lot to talk about between now and July 1st. Flames are going to be in the draft lottery. I think there's some question of, will they be using all those picks? What kind of picks do they need? What kind of players they need? A big question we'll be talking about as we move forward is, should TJ Ginla be a Flame? There's a lot to talk about moving forward, and we hope that you will join us.
Absolutely. So Sunday we'll be talking about the Canucks. We'll get into the awards conversation. Lots to talk about Quinn Hughes and the Norris Trophy. is Thatcher Demko in the Vezina race, even though he's injured, and what to make of what the Canucks approach as they try to clinch first place in the Pacific as well, and concerns about Elias Lindholm and his play. Is he playing or not? And of course, Thatcher Demko should come back this week. So lots to talk about there. You can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks as well. You can also follow Sean, Beardy Canuck 03, Tyler, TNOBLE, Christian Schneid's, SCHNAIDZ, and Devin, who will return, is at Gord Howe 09. I am NKEVOLE. Thanks again for watching. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now. As I find, hang on. Really, bye for now. Sorry, I can't see my. There we are. Bye. For real. For really real.